Introductions here. Welcome to Sasko River Center's presentation on procrastination. Our speakers today are Karen Seelert and Margot LaPointe from Sasko River Center. They're going to tell us a little bit about themselves, I think, and then carry on with the presentation. So welcome and take it away, ladies.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Procrastination, Understanding Procrastination. I am Margot LaPointe, and I'm the head of Learning Services and Transitions Department at Sasko River Center, and I am an executive functions coach and life coach. I have over 18 years of experience teaching, and I have a master's in education, and I am a certified life coach. Karen, I'm going to introduce yourself.
I'm Karen Seelert. I'm one of the psychologists at Sasko River Center. I do testing, psychological testing with kids, and I also do therapy with adolescents and young adults primarily. So procrastination is something that comes up all the time.
Okay, I'm going to start the presentation, but I wanted to say before we begin, please feel free to jump in and ask questions or make comments or however you'd like. You can also put comments in the chat and Karen will watch the chat. I'm going to do the presentation, so I won't be able to see it. So Karen will be able to monitor that. So you have two options. If you want to jump in, please feel free. If you just want to throw a comment or a question in the chat, feel free to do that also. Okay, bear with me for 2 seconds while I get this up. There we go. There we go. Okay.
Okay, so our agenda today is we're going to go over a few things. We're going to talk about what exactly is procrastination. Why do we procrastinate? We're going to go into a little bit of brain anatomy and function to understand exactly what's going on neurologically with regard to procrastination. We're going to talk about how to overcome procrastination. And with all of this, we're also going to talk about the COVID pandemic and weave in a little bit of that into all of this, because I think we've all been affected pretty significantly by the pandemic.
Okay, so I figured we'd start with what is procrastination, so we're all on the same page. So procrastination comes from Latin, of course, which meaning to put off till tomorrow. And it's also come from an ancient Greek word meaning doing something against your better judgment. So making you feel bad.
So this is the procrastination cycle. I think probably most of us at some point in our life have procrastinated something. Basically how it works is you have a project, you have a paper, you have something you need to do, and you choose to put it off for whatever reason. Maybe there's a real reason that you don't want to do it, or an imaginary reason. You decide that you're going to delay this project. Delaying leads to possible feelings of guilt. You criticize yourself. You have those coulda, shoulda, woulda feelings. And then further delays cause you to perhaps finish this project hastily or maybe even not at all. And then you get angry at yourself saying, I'm never going to do this again. And then chances are it gets repeated at some time in the future. So procrastination increased during the pandemic. I think all of us can relate to this. There's definitely more increased anxiety and stress, which your body and your brain perceive as a threat. So much uncertainty during this time just caused us to feel sort of out of control. A lot more distractions were happening. So if we were working from home, often, kids were home, spouses were home, just a lot more going on in the house. We had very few, if any, social interactions and very few buffers between home and work, meaning if you were a commuter into the city, and often you would spend that hour on the train reading a book or getting work done, there's no buffer. You leave your office and you're back at home. So really nothing to kind of break that connection between home and work. So one of the things that kind of came out of the COVID pandemic were these two sort of different types of procrastination, and it'll be interesting to see if any of you guys can relate to this. One is bedtime procrastination, also known as quote unquote revenge procrastination. I think this was probably more often for women than men, but the idea is that you're staying up late, you're watching Netflix, you're doing stuff after everybody's gone to bed, because that's the only time of day that you have for yourself. The other type of procrastination is something called productive procrastination. So that means, maybe you have a project to do, but instead of doing your project or your paper or whatever, work you have to do, you say, oh, I'm going to, clean out the kitchen cabinets, or I'm going to sweep the floor. So you're still being productive, but you're not doing really what you're intending to do.
It's interesting for me because I work with a lot of kids and young adults and even adults, and these two things come up all the time. I have people saying, yeah, I need to do something for me before I go to bed. And they've forgotten or decided to push off their homework or project or whatever they needed to do to the last minute. So they're working until, maybe 12, 1 o'clock at night, and then they need their time. So they're going to bed way later than they normally would when they haven't really been doing much during the day. So it's interesting to hear this, and the revenge procrastination is something that's been coming up a lot lately.
Yeah, and I can say I'm totally guilty of that revenge procrastination. Oh, hello, Kitty.
Sorry.
I definitely stayed up, there were nights that I was like, this is my only time to myself. So I would stay up late watching Netflix or whatever, drinking another glass of wine, anything to sort of relax.
So why do we procrastinate? Why does this happen to us? Sorry, Gretel. So it's a coping mechanism, and it's a habit that we've built over time. And we're dealing with challenging emotions and negative moods. And sometimes whatever you have to do is boring, or it creates some kind of anxiety, or you feel frustrated, or you don't want to do it, or you're not even sure how to do it. So you tend to put it off. One of the biggest things that I hear from clients and parents of clients is that they're lazy. I think they're lazy. And procrastination isn't about being lazy. It's about a feeling that someone has inside about something they want to do or are meant to do, and they don't want to. So it's an emotional regulation problem. It's not a laziness, and it's not a time management problem. A lot of people saying, like, I'm not managing my time properly, so therefore that's why I've procrastinated. But it's actually, you're not managing your time properly because you don't want to feel badly about when you start to do this project, because it makes you feel anxious, it makes you feel frustrated, or you don't know how to start, or there are so many other reasons. So focusing on managing that negative mood rather than just trying to complete the task. So focusing on, like, I'm going to do a little bit at a time, and figuring out how to overcome that negative mood or embrace it and get started. So a couple things to think about. Why aren't you doing it? Like, thinking about, like, well, what's happening? Why am I not doing the whatever I have to do, the project, the paper, the presentation? So you don't know how to do it? That would be a good reason to not start, because I'm not sure where to start. Failing to self-regulate, like regulate yourself. The fear of failure, like you're not going to do well, so you don't want to do it at all. That seems like a better alternative. And the fear of success, which I think is unbelievably prominent and people don't even know it, that people and kids and adults are afraid of succeeding because then they're going to be expected to do more of it. That perfectionism, I see a whole lot of this with the people that I work with. They want it to be just so, and they know it's not going to get there, or believe it won't get there. So then they don't want to do it. Lack of focus is another thing that I see a lot. Being able to focus for long periods of times is really hard, especially now during this pandemic. So learning how to break things down into small chunks and giving yourself the time to be able to do it a little at a time. When we created this presentation, we started a long time ago on purpose so we could do it in little chunks and be able to have it prepared way ahead of time. Avoidance. I mean, I'm sure you all see it if you have children at home, how they're avoiding the homework and they don't want to get to it. Big part of this is distractions. And I'm sure during the pandemic, you all saw this. Kids are in their room with their computer, watching Netflix, watching YouTube, playing video games. There's so many things that are so easy to get distracted by, and they're not leaving the house so that they have all this stuff that they're doing on a regular basis. And then the bottom part is, the battle between what you think you should be doing and what you want or know you should be doing. The angel and the devil on your shoulder. So what do we tell ourselves? And I think Mark was even saying this before we start. I work best under pressure. I have worked with so many people that come in and say, no, I need a deadline. And if I have a deadline, I'm really good. I get it done right before. But when I show them if they can do it ahead of time, how much better their work is, their mind is blown. They're like, wow, I had no idea that I could do this work so well. And what a difference it makes. So, and I don't know how. That's one of the things that comes up a lot. Like, I don't know how. So if you have someone or yourself is in, procrastinating something, knowing why you're procrastinating makes a huge difference. And I don't know how gives you the opportunity to go and find out or ask someone else or get the help. I don't want to. I mean, I hear that a lot. I don't want to. I say, there's sometimes there are things that you have to do to finish school, for work, or whatever it might be. But it's important you can acknowledge it. I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do this. I don't care. I've heard that from clients too. When I really get down to it, they do care, but it's just too hard. It's really what it comes down to. I'm not in the mood. Well, sure, I get that. Turns out I'm not in the mood either, but sometimes you have to kind of get to it. I forgot. I see that a lot with young adults and kids. I forgot. And I genuinely believe that some of these kids actually have forgotten. They get to it. There's some other reason why they're not doing it. I don't know how. I don't really want to, and it's hard. So I'm going to put that off. And then they forget all about it until the day before, obviously, or the day it's due. And that causes all kinds of stress. I want to wait for the right moment. That's my favorite thing. So that's when I say that right moment is right now, and we're going to get started. I'm tired or bored. And if you plan ahead and you actually are able to have the time, you can allow for that tired or bored time and then start it the next day or continue on working. So how does it affect us? And I'm sure we all know this, but when the longer you procrastinate, especially when a due date is looming, your stress and anxiety levels start to increase and you start to feel badly about yourself. So you've got your stress level and the due date is coming and your stress starts getting, out of control because now you have to actually do it and you feel badly about it. And so your best work generally doesn't happen right before it's due. All of these feelings can manifest themselves into some kind of response like a headache, a migraine, a stomach ache. And even with, sometimes with kids, they, have some kind of emotional response or act out. And as a result of all of these things, your output is inconsistent and isn't as good as if you had done it earlier. Or this is one of my favorite things. You all know about the Suez Canal and how that monster ship got stuck and everything was all blocked up. And that itty bitty little bulldozer, my to-do list, was who dug this monster ship out, right? So writing a to-do list, doing one thing at a time, it may take longer than you want, but it actually works. That little bulldozer, which was huge in our eyes, but compared to the ship, it was little, dug and dug and dug for what, 5, 6 days, and finally was able to free that monster ship and make it so that he can actually move and go down the Suez Canal. It's pretty incredible. And when you think about it for procrastination, if you can do a to-do list, or if you can do, if I do a little bit at a time every day, you will make some movement.
Yeah, I think that's the key here is like just take a little bit at a time. If it seems overwhelming, break it down, just do a little bit here, a little bit there, and then you're going to start to chip away at what you have to accomplish. Okay, so let's take a look at the brain. And so I'm not going to get into real specific details about the different lobes of the brain, but this is just a graphic of, look, we have a brain, there's 5 lobes, each part of the brain is responsible for different functions in your body, from movement to speech to perception, sensation, vision, right? And it's all very interconnected. So every part of the brain connects to every other part of the brain. Super, super complicated. Margot, for some reason, I can't see the screen. I don't know what happened here, but I can't see the slides.
Okay.
I don't know what's happening, but okay,
Still
are we on?
slide.
Okay, so yeah, so let's go to the next, the brain evolution.
Okay.
So the reason I brought this up is to kind of talk about how our brains have evolved over time. So there's this theory that there's sort of three evolutionary parts of your brain. The reptilian brain is sort of your most primitive part of your brain. It was the first to develop. It's shared with most animals, even the lowest, like reptiles, that sort of thing, dinosaurs. And then there's the mammalian brain, which was developed a little bit later. There's emotion involved, reptiles, certain animals that are lower animals don't have the ability for emotion and feeling. Mammals do. The neocortex, which is sort of, if you imagine an orange, the mammalian brain, the reptilian brain is kind of in the middle, and the neocortex is like the outer rind of the orange. That's the part of your brain that's responsible for more higher level functioning. Okay, so are we on the next? I don't know why I can't see this. This is really frustrating. Okay, so this is a look at two parts of the brain. So we're going to narrow it down into these two parts of the brain and talk about what happens during procrastination. So this is just to give you an idea of the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. So the prefrontal cortex is basically this part of your brain right here. It's the frontal lobe. When your brain develops from when you're first born to an adult, the prefrontal cortex is actually the last part of your brain to develop. So the brain develops from back to front, and the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until you're in your mid-20s or so. And again, the amygdala is part of the emotional part of your brain. Get on to the next slide. Okay, so again, the amygdala, which is kind of in the center, if you imagine like your brain is an orange, you've got the cortex on the outside. The amygdala is kind of like right in the middle of your brain. It's a small almond-shaped set of neurons, and it's involved in emotional processing and fear response. And that's part of the limbic system. So the limbic system is one of the oldest, the oldest parts of the brain, performs basic survival instincts. So constantly scanning the environment for threats. Once a threat is identified, it stimulates hormone release, such as epinephrine and adrenaline, which prepares your body to fight or to run away from a threat. Now, back in, you guys have heard of the fight or flight response. Back in, caveman days, the fight or flight response was great, right? You're faced with a threat to your life, such as a bear or a tiger. You either have to fight it off or you have to run away from it in order to survive, essentially. So the limbic system releases these hormones that prepare your body to run away or to fight this threat. Great, it was super helpful back, when all we had to do was kind of survive. Nowadays, when we scan the environment for threats, often the threats are perceived as, oh, I have a project to do at work, or I have a paper for school, or, oh, look at that, jerk on the highway that just cut me off, driving like a crazy man down the highway. So these are still perceived as threats by your brain. Okay, next slide. Again, the prefrontal cortex right here, last part of your brain to develop, not fully developed until your mid-20s. In fact, people who have ADHD in particular may not even develop until even later than that. So might be late 20s, even early 30s. The frontal cortex is involved in impulse control and executive functioning. which we've talked a little bit about. Margot talked a little bit about. Executive functioning is involved in, making plans, keeping yourself organized, switching between tasks, thinking about thinking. It's all that higher level thinking.
And you use
Okay.
your executive function skills all the time. And I actually feel so badly for these middle school, high school, and college age kids who are not in their mid to late 20s and do not have a fully prefrontal cortex that's developed. And they're being asked to do so many things that they're not being taught how. So they're being asked to, write papers and, do projects and do all of these things on their own. And they have to use these executive function skills in order to do them, but they're not fully developed. And so a lot of these people, kids and adults alike, are struggling, and it's a lot, and it's really hard because they haven't had the ability to have the time to develop it yet.
Okay, so again, prefrontal cortex involved in higher order functioning. Going back to the evolutionary slide that I showed you before, it's the newer part of your brain. So, the reptilian brain is sort of the oldest part of your brain, the most ancient. The prefrontal cortex is much newer, less developed. It's a little bit weaker when compared to other parts of your brain. It's involved in rationalization, reasoning, trying to avoid negative feelings such as anxiety. This is not automatic. So all of the functions in your prefrontal cortex involve your conscious engagement. It also involves a delayed reward. So if you think about, oh, I have a project to do, I have this paper to write, the reward is not something that's instantaneous. The reward comes, after you've written the paper, you've turned it in, you've gotten a grade from your teacher. So it's something that you really have to work at and think about in order to kind of get going. Okay, next slide. Okay, so again, going back to the previous slide that compared the amygdala versus the frontal cortex. Again, the amygdala is sort of in the middle of your brain. It's involved in emotional processing. What happens with procrastination is it becomes sort of a struggle between these two tightly connected parts of your brain. So your amygdala, which again is an automatic sort of response, you're perceiving a threat in your environment, a paper, a guy driving down the highway, a project you have to do at work. Your emotional response might be, oh, God, this makes me really nervous. I just don't want to do this. I'm bored. I'm frustrated. This is just so icky. I don't want to do it right now. So your brain perceives this as a threat, and it stimulates this fight or flight response, which wants you to get away from it. So your brain says, you know what? I don't want anything to do with this. I need to get away. I'm going to run away from this. Your emotional brain tries to take over. And as a result, you delay whatever that project is and you get an immediate reward. The immediate reward is relief, right? Oh, okay, I'm going to put that off till tomorrow. I don't have to deal with it right now. That makes me feel better right now in the moment. So it's all about immediate reward. Okay.
So what can we do? This is like the biggest part of all of this. Like, how do we help ourselves, right? So the biggest thing is knowing that you're procrastinating and acknowledging it. And once you realize that you're doing it, why am I procrastinating? What is making me push this away? Why am I doing this? Because once you understand the why, you can begin to understand and be able to tackle it. So another thing that you might want to do is look for patterns. Am I doing this with the same thing I have to do every single time? With kids, I'm like, what subject do you push off? What is it? Is it the long-term assignment? Is it math? Is it, history? What is it that you are doing? Does it happen at the same time of the day for adults? Like, in the mornings, do you say, I just can't do it? Is it something in particular? Do you have to work with numbers and you prefer not to? So understanding when it happens, why it happens, and where it happens make a huge difference. Once you understand all that, make a plan, figure it out, like understand, okay, I want to complete this. I want to do this. First thing you do is organize your workspace, know where you're going to work. Figure out what it's going to be. Is it going to be in the kitchen when nobody is home? Is it going to be in an office? Is it going to be in your room? You know, wherever you might want to do that, and organize that workspace, clear it off, make it so that you are able to work without all of those distractions. You know, if you have distractions like my cat walking by, sorry, I should have closed the door. She tends to put it, you know, open it up herself. You know, if you have those distractions, limit them as best you can. You know, make it so that you have on the computer blocks so that the kids can't go on YouTube unless, you know, or Netflix until a certain hour of the day. Making it so that you have all the materials you need. If you're building a project, you're going to need materials in order to do it. Think it through. What do I need? You may not have everything you need, but do the best you can and make it so that this isn't the only time to work, that you have other times to be able to perfect that. Do the preparation. Again, get the things that you need and prepare yourself in your head too. Like, think about it, envision doing it and knowing that feeling at the end. Oh my gosh, you know, I know that feeling when you finish a project that you've had no desire to do and you just had that feeling of relief, like, send, I'm done. You know, it's like doing final exams. You're finally finished and you can have that summertime or just a moment for yourself. The more you do this, the more you acknowledge, look for those patterns, organize, plan, and start to execute. The more you do it, the better it becomes. It becomes a habit for yourself, and you start to do this more and more and more and more. And I can tell you that I, as a young adult, was a terrible procrastinator and put everything off until the end. And now I'm an executive functions coach, so I really can't do that. I mean, I really have to, you know, lead by example is the way I look at it. And it has made my life so much easier. Learning how to break down bigger assignments, bigger projects, bigger whatever, and start with that little bulldozer on the edge of the Suez Canal, doing one thing at a time. Make a whole plan, decide, you know, make a checklist of the things to do, prioritize it, and start with one thing at a time. And the more, and give yourself the time to do it so that your stress level stays down. Does anybody have
Okay,
questions about that before we even?
so yeah.
Okay, just want to give it an opportunity.
Okay, so procrastination and mindfulness. So mindfulness has sort of become one of these buzzwords. But mindfulness, you know, recently, I think everybody's probably heard of it. It's, you know, kind of everywhere from yoga to meditation to just kind of controlling emotions. Mindfulness is actually a pretty key part of meditation, which has been around for thousands and thousands of years. So what is mindfulness? So mindfulness essentially, it's pretty simple. It's just one pointed attention to yourself or your environment. So for example, mindful awareness of taking a walk. So let's say you know, take a walk around your block, you're noticing the trees, you're noticing the smells, you're paying attention to maybe the houses that you walk by or some flowers. You just notice things, non-judgmental acceptance, not really reacting, just allowing yourself to enjoy being in the moment. I think what happens, especially pre-COVID and, you know, probably during COVID, we're so preoccupied with just everything. So the thoughts are flowing into our mind. We have our phones that we're constantly looking at. There's constant distractions, and to actually sit down and pay attention to one thing at a time requires, like, you know, conscious engagement. It's not an easy thing to do, especially when you're used to just, you know, looking at your phone or doing other things or being distracted or, yeah. So that's what mindfulness is. But how is it helpful? How is it helpful for procrastination? How can it be helpful just in our lives in general? So it helps us to become aware of patterns. So for example, if you have no idea why you're procrastinating, Margot came up with, we have a whole list of reasons why you might be procrastinating, but if you are not aware of what you're doing, how are you ever going to be able to change? So it's being able to step back and say, okay, what's going on in this moment? Why is this so, yucky for me? Why do I not want to do this? And to think about that. Is there an emotion there? Am I feeling uncomfortable? Am I feeling stressed? Am I depressed? What's going on with me? Notice any unhelpful thoughts that are popping up, such as, oh, I'm terrible. I'm never going to be able to do this. I stink. Let go of that stuff. That's not helpful. And just increase your awareness of what exactly you're doing will help to reduce the procrastination in general.
And I have found during COVID with my clients to have them just stop for a minute and just to be. And I don't know why, but during COVID, I feel like a lot of us have done less and less of that when we have the opportunity to do more and more. I feel like I know myself, I feel like I need to be productive because I have all this time, and why shouldn't I be productive? But just being is more productive as you're learning for our mind and our brain than, maybe making those lists of things to do for the moment. And so making time for being mindful is really important and almost essential to be able to have, your body be able to stop for a moment and, readjust and be able to get back to it.
Okay, so mindful awareness. Again, this is all just becoming aware of things that you are doing in the present moment and things that maybe you want to decide to change. So distractions. Are you constantly checking your phone? Are you always on Instagram, on Snapchat, or more this is for kids, but video games, what are the distractions that are going on that are preventing you from starting a project or completing a project? Do you dread hard tasks? Do you kind of avoid them? Is it something that you just constantly, kind of put off to the side? What's going on? Why is this something that you're dreading? Fear, we talked about this before. Fear of failure. Are you afraid that you're going to bomb this project or presentation or whatever it is that you're doing? Or possibly, are you afraid of success? What is it going to mean if you do really well? Are you going to have, more attention on you? Like, how do you feel about that? Is there a lack of motivation? Are you just completely, maybe there's an underlying, mental health issue such as anxiety or depression that's sort of keeping you from starting? What's going on? What are your priorities? This kind of goes back to the slide I had about the when you put something off to do something else. So, I'd rather go organize my cabinets than do this project that I have to do. What are your priorities? Put your priorities in order. Can you maybe put off the organizing of your cabinets until a little bit later so you can get started on what you really need to do? And compulsively checking things. This goes into, I think, especially during the pandemic, not that anything was really going on, but there was this fear of missing out. That's what FOMO is. So, kids and adults, I think, constantly, we're constantly checking our phones. What's going on with COVID? Are we going to miss something? What's going on with our friends? Even though nothing was really going on. It's like obsessively checking to see if you're missing out on something. So becoming aware of all of these things that kind of stand in your way are going to help you say, oh, okay, those are the things that I need to change. So there's some interesting research on procrastination. Actually, there's quite a bit of research. I've just picked out a couple of studies here that I found to be sort of interesting and also kind of back up a lot of what we've been talking about here. And that is that chronic procrastinators tend to prefer immediate rewards over delayed rewards. So like we were saying before, that emotional part of your brain that wants the immediate reward, immediate gratification. Procrastinators tend to prefer those immediate rewards. They tend to be more impulsive and process information about delayed rewards more slowly than non-procrastinators. So people who tend not to procrastinate might be more focused on those delayed rewards than people who are procrastinators. Another study more recently in 2018 found that the volume of the amygdala, remember that's the part of your brain that's involved in emotional processing, is larger than normal in chronic procrastinators. And it's less connected to areas of the brain that regulate the amygdala's reaction, meaning that chronic procrastinators, again, there's this, their amygdala is potentially larger, which means that they're more focused on those immediate rewards, more so than non-procrastinators. Another interesting study found that mindfulness meditation over a period of time, such as as little as 8 weeks, can actually shrink the size of your amygdala, meaning that you can actually change your brain. You can train yourself to become, less of a procrastinator by becoming aware of these patterns, maybe training yourself to do some meditation. It can be really helpful. It's amazing, the fact that you can actually change your brain in a short period of time. It's pretty remarkable.
This blew my mind. When I read that for the first time, I was like, wow, if I meditate for 8 weeks, I can shrink my amygdala and I'll be less of a procrastinator. Sign me up. I was super excited. Like, that's super cool. I still haven't done it yet. So maybe I'll start today.
Well, and it's not easy. I mean, starting to meditate and, learning mindfulness, it's not hard. It's just finding the time and sitting down and doing it and allowing yourself the space and the time to just be quiet with yourself and, letting go of all those negative thoughts that you have and just being. I think if anything, the pandemic has taught us, it's that, we've learned about what our priorities are, what we really want to be doing. And maybe, being busy isn't that important. I think we were all so overscheduled, particularly before the pandemic, and just being able to sit still and be, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, our bodies need that relaxation, that quiet time to recover and heal and just sort of notice what's going on in our brains.
And I find if you actually, I don't know if you're like me, but I have schedules and I know where I need to be at every, moment during the day. And if I build that into my schedule and actually put it on the schedule rather than intend to do it, I probably will do it. So now I'm going to make that intention to begin to do that today. So we have a bunch of references here of different books that we have read, and I have found personally a few things on here that are super helpful in the way I have changed the way I lead my life and the way I work. Atomic Habits by James Clear is an amazing book that is, I don't know, I find that I do things in his book without even realizing that he, told me about it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. One of my other favorites is one of the last ones on there is Mindset by Carol Dweck. And I think that she is amazing in the way she talks about mindset and how you can have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And I'm sure we've all heard these things, but not necessarily read the book. And it's those two books, in my opinion, are really good reads. Karen, do you want to say anything about any of that?
No. The one book on here called Laziness Does Not Exist is actually pretty interesting. It's more about the idea that our society is so geared towards, being productive, doing things constantly, and there's this guilt factor of, oh, what if I'm not productive, or what if I'm not working, every minute of the day. That doesn't mean you're lazy. It just means that you need to kind of slow down. So it's actually pretty interesting because it it gets into all of this like societal pressure to, you know, be productive, and you don't have to be productive every second of the day. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This has been around for a long time, by Stephen Covey. Probably a lot of you guys have heard about this. It's just a great book on, you know, people who are effective and what their habits are, essentially. So do you guys have any questions?
Yes,
This
like
is,
it.
yeah, let's open it up to questions.
I have a question. Thank you for this presentation, by the way, it's great. Since people who tend to procrastinate respond more to immediate rewards, is it beneficial to say like, hey, why don't you do something like, I don't know if you've heard of this Pomodoro technique or something, right? Like do 20 minutes of work and then give yourself a short reward, like a break, or let yourself like do half an hour of work and then get up and go get like an iced tea and come back. Like use the fact that they respond more to immediate rewards and build that in, or is that not effective in the long run because you're not actually learning to value the delayed reward? Do you know what I mean? Like, should you be building?
No, I think that's a great question. And I agree. I think Margot, you can probably jump in also, but this kind of gets into that whole chunking idea. So breaking things down into smaller bits so that, yes, you feel like you've been successful and you get that reward of, oh, okay, I did 10 minutes of work, or I accomplished maybe one part of the, you know, first paragraph of the paper I had to write. Absolutely. I think that can help with motivation and can help with that reward system for sure.
So I'm a big believer in allowing yourself or whoever it is that you're working with to have breaks. So work for as long as you can. It could be anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15, 20 minutes, and take a 3 to 5 minute break, whatever it might be. Get up, move your body, get a drink of water, go get that brownie, whatever it is that could be that small reward, but get back to it. Keeping that to just a short break while you're working on that one chunk of whatever it is that you need to do that day, and celebrate that chunk of work after you've finished it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because then you get the immediate reinforcement.
Right. Correct. In both short term and the long term.
Right. Yeah. Something I tried recently with someone was I told her to write at the end of the day, write down a list of everything she had done, because she constantly had this idea that I'm not doing enough or I'm falling behind. And I was like, I think you have that sort of cognitive bias of you just keep thinking of what I didn't do. And we always write the to-do list, but we don't actually reflect back. Like, I got so much actually done today, more than I thought. And then that's also like a reward that comes at the end of the day to be able to like write it all down and check each thing off.
That's my favorite part of a to-do list.
I know, me too. That's me too.
Crossing everything out. I'm like, woohoo, look at everything I did. I add things on that list to cross off.
It's the best part. I agree. And I'll do that with my clients too, especially when they're feeling like overwhelmed with the amount of stuff they have to do, you know, especially this time of year with exams and everything. Okay, well, let's write it down. Let's make a list. This isn't something that you have to do all in one day, right? Because I think oftentimes our brains think, oh my God, I've got this, I've got that, I have so much I have to do. How am I ever going to accomplish it? Well, let's write it down, and let's write down maybe what you can do today, what you can do tomorrow, and what maybe isn't due until next week. And then it's going to feel more doable. And again, it's that chunking and feeling like, okay, I can accomplish this, and I'm just going to do a little bit at a time to get that positive reinforcement.
That same goes for kids in school. They have to write their homework down. They all say it's all online, I can just look it up. Yes, you're absolutely right. It is all online for a lot of kids, if not almost all of them now. With that said, you have to go to different parts to find what you have to do for different subjects and different things. And it's too much toggling, but if you have one place, I love Google Keep, that you can write everything down and have it there. You can write it down. How long is it going to take you to do? I have this big project on Monday. I'm going to do 20 minutes. Tuesday, I'm going to do 20 minutes. Actually write it out and then prioritize. what are you going to do today? And be aware of like, that is doable for me. And that's how I'm going to do it. And when are you going to start?
And I think too, when, especially when kids are gripped with either, anxiety or depression, doing even one small thing feels like overwhelming. So, it's just accomplish one thing today. It doesn't have to be, 10 things, just pick one thing that you're going to do, and that's going to feel like you accomplished something. So it's just baby steps, little bit at a time, and you'll get there.
Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Oh, wait, there's something here in the chat. For mindfulness, is there a specific amount of time that it is useful? I know it is better than none, but is there a scientifically proven recommendation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say if you can do it at all, that's better than nothing. The tough thing about meditation and mindfulness is that it's a practice, it's a habit that you have to sort of develop. So, for example, you're not going to get up tomorrow and run a marathon, right, without training. It's the same thing with mindfulness or meditation. You're not going to get up tomorrow and meditate for an hour when you don't even know what you're doing. You have to take it, little bits at a time. If you can sit for a minute, awesome. Maybe the next day you sit for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and you build up to something that feels comfortable for you. So there's some great, phone apps that can, help with guided meditation or mindfulness. Those are great to start off with. I don't think there's anything, any studies off the top of my head that I can think of that say, oh, if you meditate for 5 minutes versus 20 minutes, that's better. It's what works for you. I think it's a very individual choice.
I also know that there are a lot of guided meditations out there, even on YouTube. And, even online. I know Oprah and Deepak do a lot of free ones, which I love and I sign up for myself. So I have tried to do it a fair amount, and I have so many on my phone personally that I use, and different apps that I've used. Headspace is an app that you can use. I think you have to pay for it, but there are different apps that you can guide you through a meditation, so to speak, which is different than a mindfulness.
Yeah, it's essentially, mindfulness is, a type of meditation, let's say.
Okay.
So, mindfulness is just becoming aware. Yeah, there's different types of meditation, but mindfulness is just one type that you're just eyes open, eyes closed, going for a walk, sitting in your car, whatever. But all it is just attention to yourself, to your environment. That's a type of meditation. There's also guided meditations, there's mantra meditations, there's, any number of different ways of, kind of calming yourself down and focusing. But the idea of meditation is just focusing on one thing, whether that's your a thought in your head or the environment or some mantra statement that you focus on. That's essentially what mindfulness or meditation is. It's kind of the same thing, in a sense.
Oop, I got another one. I like the Calm app, but I also downloaded John Cabot's
Zen. I love him.
seminar phone, which combines education about mindfulness and the practical strategies guided mindfulness meditation practice. Pretty cool.
Yeah, he's awesome. John Kabat-Zinn. He's sort of like the godfather of mindfulness. So anything with him is, yeah, he's awesome. He's written some books too that are great. So I don't know, was there a question in there or?
No, I think it was just saying like,
yeah,
I
love him.
I was just sharing.
Yeah, he's great. Big thumbs up for John Kabat-Zinn.
I've listened to some of his audio books like on my commute. So I found him to be really helpful for me personally.
Yeah, and his voice is very calming.
Yeah, for some reason I don't love Headspace for that reason. I don't know if it's changed, but the accent didn't work for me.
liked it at first and then I didn't like it. I appreciate that.
Well, and I think that's a great example of you have to find something that works for you. So some people might say, wow, I love Headspace. I love that guy's voice, right? I know there's a woman that you can choose also. And other people might be completely put off by that. So it's, what type of meditation works for you? Is it the mindfulness? Is it some kind of mantra meditation? You got to experiment. You got to try it out. It's like anything in life. Are you a runner? Are you a yogi? Are you a CrossFitter? What works for you?
Fantastic. Any other questions or thoughts? Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We really appreciate it. And please feel
Thanks
free
so
to reach out
much.
to either one of us for anything.
So just to wrap up, Margot, I will, if you send me the PDF, I will include that of the slides and a link to the recording today. I think there were some people who weren't able to make it, unfortunately, who would benefit from what you guys discussed. So that'll be available also, obviously, to the people who registered today. So present today. So
Sure, no
very good.
problem.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome.
Have a great
Thank
day.
you guys.
Have a great day. Enjoy your mindful day.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.